And I thought it was very inspiring in many ways, also crazy in many ways, but I'm also a little bit crazy myself, so that fitted well. Even before my friends had an email address, I was up there doing web publishing for one of the largest banks in Denmark. I did their first website. So we have investigated around 7,000 Nordic impact companies and looked at their impact. I think the budget was around 30 or 40 million euros. That's like 10 size of a normal feature film in the Nordics. I was a rock star for a day. It was fantastic.
Hello, Richard. How are you doing? How was the seafaring yesterday close to Copenhagen, I guess?
Oh, hi, Petri. I'm fine. I hope also you're fine. Yeah, I was out sailing yesterday and it was pretty windy. I was actually about 16 meters per second, and we were sailing my friend's Phantom 42, which is a Danish design sailing boat from the 80s. So we were 4 people and had a blast actually on up in the bay north from Copenhagen.
Are you an experienced sailor, or this was your first time in a sailing boat?
No, I'm actually, I grew up at the Swedish West Coast in the 70s, and I started windsurfing. No, actually, I started sailing a dinghy when I was 7 for some years, but I got a little bit tired of that. I probably wasn't too exciting to sit in the dinghy. So my father got hold of one of the first windsurfers that came to Sweden in 1980. So I started to windsurf, and Varberg, where I grew up, became actually a metropole for windsurfing. All the 80s was one of the hottest spots in the Nordics. So I grew up there just 10 minutes with a bike from the sea. So I did windsurfing from April through November, and also sometimes in the Christmas from I was 12 years until I was 20. So I've been windsurfing very, very much all around the year for many years in the 80s. And we didn't have a sailing boat ourselves, but a lot of my friends had sailing boats, so I did a lot of sailing with them, primarily in the Swedish along the Swedish coast, but also some trips to Denmark, around Denmark, and so on. So I'm pretty experienced, yes. And my friend Eigil, he's a very experienced sailor, and his kids are grown-ups now, and his wife unfortunately died some years ago in cancer. So he's planning for a global sailing trip. And so we're training together. Maybe I can join him, not 2 years around the globe, but a few months or so in some distant future when he's sailing around the globe. So it's pretty fun. Yeah, I like it a lot.
You mentioned you were also as a student in San Francisco. Now I'm just wondering whether it was actually the surfing which made you to decide to go there.
No. I mean, I always dreamt about coming to California surfing in the 80s when I grew up. But then I went to Denmark in 93, started an education called the Chaos Pilots, which was kind of a project management education. And it was very open to your own forces and your own ideas on what to do. So I actually started to interest myself very, very early on for the internet. Actually, back in summer 94, I was on the internet first time, and it was before the web was even present. So I used a bulletin board system, which was a Unix-based system, and I came across a global community in San Francisco called The Well, which was the hottest online community ever. There's been reading a lot of books about that, The Well. And I got in touch with them. So my first email address was actually engström@well.com. And I got in contact with some people there through their bulletin boards and did a lot of discussions with them on topics that I like, music, tech, other stuff. And then in 95 spring, I had a possibility to do a 4 months international internship at my studies, and I could pick and choose and try to find an internship myself. So I contacted The Well, and I got through to their management, and I was actually one of the first ISP as internet service providers in San Francisco. So they did internet service providers and some web publishing and so on. So I actually got an internship there and stayed in San Francisco from April 95 through July 95, and I learned a lot, and I came across some of the coolest people in San Francisco. There were some people that did a virtual reality markup language. HTML. They actually wrote a new language called the virtual reality markup language, and they did the first virtual reality activities over the web. We're talking back when we used Netscape and stuff. So I learned so much. When I came home in the late summer of 95, I started actually to do web publishing myself. So even before my friends had an email address, I was up there doing web publishing for one of the largest banks in Denmark. I did that, their first website. I did Renault, the car manufacturer's Danish website, together with some other people. I was studying, so I did project management and communication, and I find some people at the university that wrote some CGI and HTML, and some designers who could do graphics. So when I came out of the year 95, I had already published 3 commercial websites for clients. So I was very, very early on. But yes, obviously, when I were in San Francisco, I also did some surfing. So I took a 10-day ride down Highway 1 at some point, actually around the coast, and went to some of those surf spots between San Francisco and LA. There are some great surf spots there. I remember me and a friend, Jakob, we found a surf town. It was very, very small. They had this classic boardwalk pointing out from the beach, and in that small town along the coast, I think there were 2 bars, but there were 10 surf shops. I mean, it was crazy. So it was all about surfing. So yeah, I did some surfing in California as well. But what actually took me to San Francisco was my early on interest in the internet.
So while surfing and doing websites, did you also play or make some music?
I mean, I didn't do that. I grew up, played piano from when I was 6, and played piano with an old lady. I remember I biked from home 10 minutes down to an old lady. She had a big house and a big piano, and we studied piano there. And I had some kind of talent for that. But when I came out of 6th grade, I was a little bit annoyed about just playing, Chopin and Beethoven and stuff. So I founded a band with some of my friends, and we started to do pop music from 7th grade. And I played with them for about 10 years. So I played a lot of music then, and also wrote some music and so on. And then I had a long break from mid-20s until early 30s when I had been in Denmark for some years, and I found some seniors like myself. So we also started a band there and played 3-4 years, and also did some music. And then I also been doing some music on computers and keyboards. My instrument is piano, keyboards, but I also play some guitar. So yeah, I still play once in a while, and mostly just trying to dream away with the piano. And yes, I'm not so much into playing notes and other stuff, so I play just what comes to mind and so on. And my youngest son at 14, he also played sometimes. So yeah, music is a good thing and a inspiring thing, and it's also a little bit of meditation when you live in a hectic day from early morning to late night.
Did you publish your music? Is there any place we can find your albums?
No. I have not published my music, but no, really. But what was fun was actually when I had some 2-3 years in the late 90s when I did a lot of computer, internet, and all that stuff, and I also started to play with some studio software early on, Cubase, if you remember that, and did some electronica, some instrumental electronica. For myself, and the fun thing was when I was about to get married, my friends caught me one day doing a bachelor party for me, and they've got some of those digital files from my wife, my coming wife. So they have rented a real studio with one of the big producers in Denmark who has produced Gasoline and other stuff. So he actually had taken some of my music, one of my numbers, and put it into his studio setup, and beat it a little bit up with some extra beats. And then we actually made a new number together there, where I was a lead singer and I helped him to create the rest of the songs, and my friends did the choir and so on. And that was actually put out on the internet at that day. It was actually, I must tell you this, it was actually a fantastic bachelor party. Think of, you're sitting at your job. We had my first startup at that point this is 2000. We had my first startup in Copenhagen. We did the image software for the internet, for photo albums and stuff. And I said, and my business friend, which was also my best friend, Anders, he said, oh, there's actually coming an investor on visit today from Holland. I got through to him through our lawyer. And he wanted us to come by accidentally and see what we do and so on. And of course, I mean, we were always looking for money. So he said, let's do that. And I said, fine enough. And he came and he was kind of, talking Dutch, English kind of accent. So we talked about that sometime. And I presented I was the managing director. Anders was our CTO. So I presented our business, what we were up to, when we were about to get going for fundraising again and so on. And so on. He listened, asked some pretty serious questions on all that kind of stuff. And suddenly he just took me out of the office. And I didn't understand what happened. So I was so stunned. So I didn't really resist. And outside of the office, there was a big Dodge van. That one with a bar inside and sofas and stuff. And that Dodge had actually been used for New Kids on the Block the week before when they were in Copenhagen playing. So they brought me into that Dodge, and there sat 5 or 6 of my best friends, with a drink in their hand. So this was around lunch. So they drove me in that. We had a drink in that Dodge with a chauffeur. And we drove to the studio, and we made that song for 1.5 hours with the choir and I sing vocals. And then we drove further on, and one of my other friends, he was actually the communications director for the metro, which was about to be built in Copenhagen at that point. So he had fixed so we could come 20 meters underground and do a music video. So we came 20 meters underground with a video crew. So there were people filming, and I got some new dresses on. So they filmed. After that, we had another drink, and then we took to a studio, and they did the photo shooting of me. And then we went out dining and had some wine. And then some of my other friends, they had one of the hippest bars in Copenhagen at that point, and they made a release party. So I was actually taken through, studio recording, video recording, photo shoot, dinner, and to a bar where there was a release of a CD. And in the meantime, they have printed a CD with photo on, put the music on a CD, and at the bar there were like 200 people, and there were big video screens on the walls. So I was a rock star for a day. It was fantastic. So fantastic. And that song called Oi, O-Y, and with DJ Rick Hard, who was the name they gave me. And that was actually published online at that point. And you could find it on iTunes at that point, actually. This is back in 2000, so it's like 20 years ago. That was mindless. So that's the only time I have been published as a musician online. But it was a great experience. And yeah, it's really fun telling about that. So no, I have not been publishing anything else, even if I think that I do some pretty interesting music. Well, yeah, that was fun.
How did you get into politics?
Yeah, that's true. Actually, at this school, the Chaos Pilots, which was a pretty interesting school, started out in 91 with a Danish class, and I came down for the studies in 93 as the first international class for that. It's like a bachelor in project management. The guy, Uffe Elbeck, who founded that school and became the headmaster. And he managed that school for many years. I think there is like 25 teams that have examine the chaos pilots. But he left the school after maybe 15 years and moved to, this was in Aarhus on Jutland in Denmark, but he moved to Copenhagen, as many other of us, and he went into politics for you could say for a central liberal party for some years, and actually became a culture minister for a year or so. But he left that party and founded a new party called the Alternative, and this was in fall 2013. So he founded that, and they released that party with a press meeting in 27 November 2013. And I know Uffe very well, and I know some of the other people who founded the party and were part of the board for the party. So Uffe asked me if I wanted to join and build their web and social media appearance and activities. So I everything was volunteering, and we all had jobs and our other businesses or whatever we do. So everyone was volunteering for this. So I gathered a bunch of central people around all that with website, membership application, e-commerce site, social media, and all that kind of stuff. And I gathered a team around that, and then we just got volunteers on board, and the whole party got about 200-300 volunteers aboard that winter 2013-2014, and then we really hit it. And then there was a election coming up in June 2015, and we actually succeeded very well. This was a new, and it's still a party in the parliament, and it's a new green modern party. So we worked hard for 1.5 years, and we actually entered the parliament in the election in June 2015 with 4.8% of the votes. So we got 9 mandates. It was that was such a journey that 1.5 year. I never experienced something like that. It was crazy, really, to see just how people. I mean, it must have been like, Greta Thunberg experience, when so many people just mobilize around some of your own values and ideas and activities for a better society. So that was I think that is one of my most thrilling experiences ever.
Then you've been also doing quite a bit of production and entertainment mainly in the movies.
Well, it was this. As I said, I started early on with the internet in mid-90s, and I built a few companies, and some hit off and some didn't hit off so well in that .com era. But I succeeded with a few of my projects there, and then in the around 2002, I felt that I've been working very hard for almost 10 years around the internet, and I thought that everything became very much commercialized and very technology driven. Obviously, that's what happens when technology comes around. People are commercializing it, and I was more into the internet because of the community and the communication possibilities and so on. And I've always been interested in films. I came across a lady in Denmark who just were about to found a film festival, and we didn't really have an international film festival in Copenhagen at that point. So she had a plan to found the Copenhagen International Film Festival, and we talked about that. And she saw that I had all that commercial aspects in my career that could help with the fundraising and build sponsor activities and ticket sales and so on. So I actually jumped into her project. So we launched the first film festival in Copenhagen in 2003 called Copenhagen International Film Festival, and it still exists today. It's pretty acknowledged internationally. It's called the CPA PIX at the moment. But so I worked with that for 5 years and built that festival from scratch up to around 40,000 visitors each year, primarily from Denmark. But we also had a Golden Swan Prize. So we also had a lot of international directors and film people that came to Copenhagen for our prize award and so on. And I got very hooked on the film business, and I thought it was very inspiring in many ways, also crazy in many ways, but I'm also a little bit crazy myself, so that fitted well. So I wanted to go on and see if I could jump into production and financing. So in 2007, I founded a financing company for myself, and I started to work with some of the main production companies like Centropa, Nimbus Films, and a few others. And also, I also worked with SF in Sweden for the big, the big Temple Knights film based on Jan Guillou books, Arn. He came out with 2 big films in 2007 or 8, which were the largest films ever produced in the Nordics. I think the budget was around 30 or 40 million euros. That's like 10 size of a normal feature film in the Nordics. And I actually did some financing for them, some creative financing. So I worked quite some years with the financing of films, and then I started to kick some of my own projects. And one of the first projects, which is a small feature film called Black Coffin Vinyls, which is a black and white film from Copenhagen, and also with some animation mixed into it. That I actually got a Danish Academy Award in 2013. I mean, we didn't make any money exactly out of the film, because you never do in Scandinavia. But we got an award, and I got out on international platforms. So I spent some years in Cannes and Berlin and American film market and other film markets, tried to finance some of my other projects. And we were very far with a Nordic science fiction feature film, where we actually had one of the main stars in the film was, what is his name? Christopher Hivju. The guy, the Norwegian guy with the red beard. He's actually part of Game of Thrones. You know him when you see him. He has big red hair and big red beard. And I haven't seen so much of Game of Thrones, but he was actually in Game of Thrones, and we got him actually as a lead role. So we did a 17-minute pilot for a sci-fi produced in Scandinavia, and I went around with that in my bag for a year and tried to finance that. When we didn't succeed to finance it. It's hard to finance film, but so I've been working very much with films. Both film festivals, but also film financing and some production. So, but I left film business in 2013 because if I wanted to continue, I should go international. And I thought I had my family in Denmark and so on. And because I'm not into doing commercial films, like kids films and family films and stuff. I like to do some certain stories and really put effort to that. And if you want to finance that, you have to be out on those platforms internationally all the time with 3 to 5 projects in your bag, trying to finance them. And then it's hard work, and you have to travel a lot, and it's very risky. I mean, startups, technology is also risky, but film is one of the riskiest venture activities you could ever get into. So that was hard. I did 6 years working very much and didn't make so much money. So it was hard, but it was fun and exciting at sometimes, obviously. And also we got acknowledged for some of our films, as I said.
There was also this sci-fi action adventure called Proto.
Yeah, exactly. That was actually one of the short films. That was the first international financing I did outside of the Nordics. So I got some funds from a film fund in Denmark and from a film fund in London. So we did a co-production between Denmark and England, and it was actually, we shot the film in Denmark for 5 days. It's a 12 minutes, as far as I remember. I mean, this is 10 years ago, but we did a 12-minute film with very high technology. So we filmed 4 or 5 days in Denmark with some green screen and stuff. And then we had a team in Edinburgh, in Scotland, and in London who did some robots that was playing towards real actors, live actors. And we did a small film and that was actually became a very good film. It took a year to do that, but it became good. And we had release on London Film Festival. We had our launch in January 2013. Yeah, I'm very, very proud of that film. It's people should see that. It was very well done, also by the sci-fi people who did all the technology in Denmark and the robots and had them very well playing with live actors on screen. You cannot see that this is not real robots, but yeah, it was a very fun project, really.
So what was the movie about?
There is a robot living in a robotic laboratory, and there is a professor who don't want the robots to have their own life. He wants to steer them to do what he trains them in table tennis and other sports things, because he wants, and you don't know that in the start, but in the end he wants to sell those robots to war company or like a military company. But the two of the robots are falling in love, and there is one of the professor's assistants who understand that actually those two robots have a soul of their own. So he teaches the robot to play a violin instead, and it's a very, very skilled robot. So obviously he plays violin very well. But the professor, he's not so happy about that, because he wants to manage that robot and don't have that robot to do what it likes itself. So it's a conflict between having technology have a soul and its own ideas and needs in life, you could say.
How many startups you've been founding, and I understand you have, like we already heard, you've been doing many things at the same time. But I think one of the consistent themes is that you're an entrepreneur, you're always building new things, you're always curious, you're always looking for new and exciting things. Is there something you have done for a very long time? Like one of the themes is websites, building websites and being with the internet wave, if you will. Are there any other themes which are following you in your entrepreneurial career?
I mean, I did the internet for 10 years. The internet has always been part of what I do, because I like technology. And obviously, when we came into around 2005, everything was technology. Right? So whatever you did in business, I mean, even we did films and film financing, we obviously used the internet for distributing our films and selling our films and so on. So, but I didn't work so much with publishing. I mean, I did that in 95 when I came back, because that's what people started out with. But already soon in 96, I founded a company within the Egmont corporate. So we built a company to 40 people in 2 years, from early 97 to end of 99. We built a company at 40 people for the Egmont corporate to do film and kids and game entertainment. And there is actually still... So we build a lot of products in the Egmont corporate and build kind of a portal to those products for them. So there's actually one, and then they sold that company to an American publisher, because Egmont had hard times to really get that internet business going this is back in 99, 20 or 2000, so it's early on. But they sold that. But one of the products I built that I was managing is called Game Reactor. So we launched the first game, you could say game media in the Nordics back in 98. And that was sold in 2000 to another publishing company. And it's actually today the largest gaming media in the Nordics, called Game Reactor. So I actually built the first version of that like 22 years ago. But anyway, so I didn't do so much web publishing, but more built companies. And after that, we built one other internet venture doing image technology. And then I went into film, and I launched the festival, and then film financing and production company and so on. Maybe 10 companies the last 25 years. And then I have founded the last 5 years, I've went into an area of business development and financing of startups and scale-ups that do green technology and other sustainable solutions. So I have 2 companies now where we primarily help entrepreneurs early on with financing of green technology and sustainable solutions. So we have investigated around 7,000 Nordic impact companies and looked at their impact. How do they reduce CO2 emissions? How do they reduce food waste? How do they clean acres of soil? How do they include vulnerable people in the job market, etc., etc.? So we have a platform and made a lot of different market analysis on that market. So we help investors like business angel and venture funds and soft money bodies and other family offices to actually find the most promising Nordic impact startups that have sustainable solutions that do good and make a great business at the same time. So we have that company called ImpactX, where we have all our data. And then we have another initiative called the One Initiative, where we this year, for the second time, do the Nordic Impact Business Summit in September, 17th September. And we're also doing a Nordic Impact Investing report this spring and summer and write that and launch that in September. So the last 5 years, I've been working with business development and financing in impact business.
How do you define impact, and what is good impact?
You could say that is a personal view at the same time as it is an objective view, because I think that impact is obviously something that you do to have a positive effect on people and society and environment and the planet as such. But an impact is good if you really know what kind of impact you do. So you have to, I mean, if you really have to be professional and serious about that, we have actually developed a system we call the Impact Business Modeling System. So we look at three things. We look at the impact mapping, the impact tracking, and the impact scaling. And if you do impact mapping, you have to have a theory of change. You have to understand what are you putting in as resources, like capital, competence, people, to solve a problem. And what is the impact of that in the end? To give you a simple example, you could say that if you have people drinking too much alcohol and misuse that or abuse that, you can put in some competence and people and some capital to start a company that helps alcoholics. So you put in that resources, and then you get the output, which is maybe, say, a course that those people take. And what is the outcome? Then the outcome is that those people, or some of them obviously, get out of alcohol and can live a normal life again. And then the impact in the end is that society gets better economically, socially. So that's a theory of change. You say, I have some competence that I can help people that have a problem. What is the output? If I put in that competence and some money, I make an application or a course or something else. And what's the outcome? The people or the people with the problem have a solution. And the impact in the end is larger than that for society. So that is actually how you map impact. If you then have a theory of change, then you can track it. You can say, okay, how can I set up some targets or KPI for that impact? So if I have a course for people with alcohol abuse, I can see I want to have 10 people through my course each semester or each season. I want to have 8 of them to get out of alcohol and 2. So that's my target or my KPI. So if you have a target KPI, then you can start to measure that, and then you can report that back to your investors or to the customers, the one who will take your course, or back to society. So that is first mapping your impact, then tracking your impact. And then obviously you can scale that impact in a way how you do that business model. So if you start to teach others that also can train those people with alcohol abuse, you can scale that, because then you have more trainers. So that's if you do a business model where you are not doing all the teaching yourself, but you are teaching teachers, then you can scale your business. So that's the way we approach companies, whether they have an app for food waste or a renewable technology for renewable energy or social inclusion or whatever. So we help them to look at their mapping, their tracking, and their scaling of their impact. So that's also a way for us to understand those companies when we pick out the most promising companies and present them to investors. So I think that's a serious way to work with impact.
You've been screening quite a bit of impact companies, at least in the Nordics. Can you say that there's some kind of clusters, or some countries have more like higher density of certain types of impact companies, or are there any differences between the?
There is a little bit of differences. If you look a little bit on it in Finland, where you're from, you have a lot of startups impact startups in health and helping out with mental health and health platforms and so on. You're pretty far in that area. If you look at Denmark is a little bit more far in social inclusion. We have a lot of impact startups and companies that include people with autism or other problems, former prisoners and people with different abuse, and get them replaced in the job market. If you look at Sweden, they have more companies into renewable energy or energy sources like batteries and stuff. And Norway obviously have a marine focus. They're trying to change their society from being fossil fuels, building their economy on fossil fuels, and now building their economy on sea. But I mean, we are pretty much the same. If you read our reports, it's not that big difference. But if you should say, social inclusion and equality is strong in Denmark, mental health well-being in Finland, energy in Sweden, and the sea water in Norway.
What about investors? What do you see in the last years in regards to investors? Are there more people coming into the field? Are there more institutional investors getting involved? What's the trend, and what do you think is going to happen in the near future?
I mean, there are more investors coming into this. It's quite simply because we can see from our last report we did last year, which is called Impact Report Nordic Investors, where Nordic investors participated in an online survey. And we asked them about their approach and activities in impact investing, if they do, if they don't, how they do, how they don't, etc. And why are more getting into this? It's quite simply because 83% of the participants in our survey last year of Nordic investors in general, they expect their impact investing to deliver a financial return above or at market rates. So 83% actually think this is a good business opportunity. And in the long term, when you look at investments for more than 7 years, 40% of the Nordic investors, they expect their impact investments to be a better financial investment than their conventional investments. So it's about the money. And there are so many consultants running around with this 17 colors badge on their jacket, all these badges people run around with, and they talk so much about this and that and that when it comes to all this sustainability. And investors, that don't matter in the long run. If it's a good business opportunity, they invest in impact. If it's not, they don't invest in impact. They're in it for the money, and that's the mandate they have when they help other LPs to invest through their fund. So it's about the money. That's why they do it. And we can see that it's actually a good expectation and results when it comes to deliver a financial return also on impact. And we can furthermore see that 76% of them invest in renewable energy, and 47% in health, and 46% in education. And I think that is also interesting to see that, Nordic, we have had this 100 year of social democratic tradition. So we know how to combine social development with financial development. That's how our societies are based. And, the welfare system is the fundament for that. And obviously, health and education are big parts of that everyone should have access to health. Everyone should have access to education. And we also have been good at renewable energy sources, with hydro energy in Norway and Sweden, and wind energy in Denmark, for instance. So also impact investors look very much still into renewables and health and education.
So can you say that impact investing is actually value investing? So you just choose basically the values and then you look for those companies who are aligned with your view of the world.
Yeah, sure. You're totally right. And that is why we do this impact report this year again, as I said. And so we just launched a new survey. And actually one of those questions is actually for the investors. It's many questions in that survey, but one is actually, how do you align your values with your investments? And it's very much about, if you're an investor going for impact seriously, you should think through what values do you want to bring to the world, and how can you then invest in solutions so those values are implemented along your capital. So obviously, if you are a serious investor, you do some strategic work and think about what values. Is inequality a big value for you, that you like to have a more equal world in between people? Then you should obviously look for companies that work with reducing inequality. If sound health is something that is a big value for you, then you should obviously look for those Finnish companies that do mental health platforms for kids around, say, bullying or HDAD. So you should obviously look very strongly on what is valuable for you and do a strategy on that. And then you can get our help, or you can research yourself for companies that have solutions that implement that value in society and the world.
What makes you happy?
Happy. It makes me happy to have a day like today when I can get up at 6 and it's all quiet. I can have a cup of tea. I can take a run and I can sense the nature and I can sense the world, and I can come home and have a good breakfast and also have some opportunity to read something interesting from books and so on. So to have that opportunity to be fit, be aligned with nature and your body, and at the same time have intellectual inspiration and intellectual work. But I also like a lot to have dialogue with people. I really love to sit around tables with people and talk broadly in different areas. The areas that I like mostly is history, politics, and technology. So I think those areas are interesting to have people in cross-disciplinary discussions. That makes me very much happy.
What are the books and themes you currently reading or interested?
At the moment, I was very I hadn't read philosophy for quite some years, and then I was very inspired this fall. I took a few weeks off and read a lot of books, and I read those books by Yuval, what is it called, The Sapiens and the Homo Deus. So I read all his books this fall, and they are thick, so it took a few weeks. I read them and I did some thinking there, and now I also very inspired now by thinking in new ways of economics and new ways of our economic systems in the world. So at the moment I'm reading Piketty and his book The Capital. I didn't read that when it came 4 or 5 years ago, but I'm reading that now, and I also bought his next book that just came a few weeks ago, at least in Danish a few weeks ago. It's very hard to read in English. It's very, very hard. So I waited for the Danish translation. It's called Capital and Ideology. So that's on my shelf at the moment. Economics, philosophy.
How do you define success?
I think success is to be satisfied yourself. It has nothing to do with reaching certain targets or goals. It's success is to be satisfied. And it doesn't have anything to do with venturing or entrepreneurship at all. If you're a person that are satisfied with yourself, so you feel that you're grounded in your own life and that you're very happy with where you are and the people you have around you and the life you live, no matter what it is. Actually, I mean, I don't have a morals in that way that people should live their, I mean, I obviously like that people think about their life and how they can do good for others, not doing good for themselves only. But I think that success is actually if you're satisfied with yourself firstly and have a good self-esteem, and then also are satisfied with the life you have around you. I think that is success.
What drives you? What makes you wake up in the morning and go running and discover these new things and eventually come up with the new business plan and company out of at the other end?
I mean, if I really look at myself and I think and understand what I'm doing, I'm 51 years and have lived half my life somehow, and I can see that I'm searching for meaning. So I think that what drives me is actually searching for meaning in my own life and meaning for life and people in general. So to really see what is meaning and how could meaning be achieved for all of us. So that drives me very much, and I'm very sensitive to what's coming next. As you heard a little bit about myself, I think that at several occasions I have shown some kind of leadership at unknown and uncultivated markets. I started with internet very early on in '94. I tried to do the first science fiction production in the Nordics. I'm been building impact business ecosystem for 5 years before even the Sustainable Development Goals was there, and no one talked about impact, so on. So I think that I'm very sensitive to what's coming next. So I think that to be able to understand what's going on, to be able to talk with people on the evolution back in history and forward, that makes me happy. But I'm also very happy to be in nature. I love using a wave as a power to transport me in a sail ship on a surfboard or a run in the nature or hike on mountains. So that makes me also very happy to be part of nature and feel that I'm a small brick in the bigger picture, also in the forces of nature.
So what do you think about the post-corona wave? What's going to happen in the near future and how our life is going to be changing and looking in the next 10 years?
I think that we are already getting back to normal. I mean, we're opening up already. Even Italy, who has been so affected by corona, they are opening up now, and they even say that mid-June you could come traveling to Italy again, because we need you as a tourist. So I think that short term, we will go back to normal. That's how we are. But I think that some people working on another level with economics and politics and policies and security and environment and climate, they will hang on to this as an opportunity to kickstart a new way of seeing our global system of economics, where growth might not be the holy grail, but something else will define what is good economy for the world, but also on security and migration and other policies. So I think that on a long term, say on a 10-year perspective, I think that we will change towards a world where we will bring values, follow values in all parts, not only in politics, but also in economics and so on, which are about a better climate, higher equality, and higher certainty for life somehow.
What are the aspects of Copenhagen you enjoy very much?
What do you mean?
You are Swede living in Denmark, and Copenhagen obviously is a very wonderful place. So I'm just asking any tips you have for anyone, when the borders are opening up again and you can do some traveling. What is fun to do? What do you really love about Denmark in overall, and then Copenhagen.
I mean, there are many things to Copenhagen, and I mean, I've been in Helsinki a few times. There are many things to Helsinki as well, or Stockholm, or Oslo. But I think the Copenhagen is interesting. When you come here, you should bike. You should rent a good bike, really good bike, and bike around Copenhagen, because it's one of the most bikeable cities in the world. And you approach a city in a total different way when you go biking. I mean, I also do sightseeing buses, sitting on the roof and so on. When I go to all capitals, I always do 2 hours of sightseeing, because then you get a fast and speedy introduction to a city from a good guide and so on. But then I rent a bike, or I go with what do you call those cyclos, where you can sit in front of a biker. And because I think that is a very nice way to approach the city and see a city from that level. And you are very easy coming around. So I think you should bike in Copenhagen. So that is a very interesting thing. I think you should spend the harbor. We have the harbor close in the city, and we have clean waters. You can, if you come in the summer, you can jump into the water everywhere around the harbor. So that is a nice thing that I like very much. If you come in the winter, you can use one of the sauna clubs, which I also do, and you can jump into the water after a hot sauna. And then I think you should obviously visit Christiania, which is that society, that military area that was occupied in the 70s. That's now is its own society in the city, owned by the people who live there. And that's a beautiful area. It's a spectacular place, because there is a lot of different people there. Obviously, there are also a lot of drug dealing, but there is a lot of interesting people, and they have built some very peculiar houses and stuff that you see from the Hobbit films and so on. So the people are living in a very different way. They're still integrated in a cosmopolitan city like Copenhagen. So I think that. And last thing, I think you should go up to Louisiana, which is a fantastic art museum. We have like a membership there, me and my wife. So we go there probably once a month, and they have good collection of art, very contemporary, but also great older art. And they have always good exhibitions, and they also have a great area for kids where you can draw and paint and so on for yourself. So if you like to place your kids for an hour in a creative studio, you can do that, and then you can just stroll around and see all this great area. And it's a nice area by the sea. In the summer, you can sit outside and have lunch and so on. So Louisiana is like 30 minutes north from Copenhagen. It's a great art museum. I think you should see that. And then maybe the last thing, I haven't tried it myself, but this year we opened up a outdoor ski hill in Copenhagen called Copenhagen Hill, and it's built on a plant that is actually an energy plant. So they are burning waste there to produce energy, and they built a ski hill up that, and they have a climbing side, which I think is like 90 meters, or is like maybe the highest artificial climbing area in the Nordics. It's like 100 meters high climbing, and then you can go downhill on this kind of grass, plastic kind of material. And in the winter, obviously, there might be some snow. And I think that is a pretty interesting, fun thing, very Danish somehow to build a ski downhill track on top of a new energy plant. It's just in the city of Copenhagen.
What is your favorite word?
My favorite word? Yeah, my favorite word is actually 2 words, but maybe, let me say, if it's only 1 word, it would be anarchy. But I think that if you put pragmatic before it, I think it fits very well. So I'm a little bit anarchistic, but I'm also very pragmatic to achieve something with that chaos I try to jump into, or the deconstruction or disruption of old things, to see it in a new way. So I think that pragmatic anarchy is my favorite word.
What is your least favorite word?
That's conservative. I cannot stand conservatism.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Well, I think I answered it already, but it turns me on to try to understand what's coming next, what's up, and understand how things are interconnected, interdisciplinary between politics, economic, technology, history, nature, ideas, and so on. So that turns me very much on.
What turns you off?
I think that what really turns me off is people that don't want to change themselves to improve life for others, but rather keep things as they are. I mean, if you don't want to change yourself a little bit so you can improve life for others, that really turns me off. I get really angry on such people.
What is your favorite curse word?
It's in Danish, actually. So it's shit in Danish, and you say Lord.
What sound or noise do you love?
There's one sound, and that has to do with how I grew up, which I told you about my surfing. I think the sound of waves entering the beach, it's a stunning sound, and it's so much carries so much life and energy and power. So the sound of waves entering the beach, I think is I could fall asleep to that. I could wake up to that. I could live with that sound whenever. It will never terror me to have that sound around me.
What sound or noise do you hate?
I think cars in the street is pretty annoying, actually. I hate cars in the street. I'm looking forward to this electric evolution of cars, so we can have as much silence as possible in the street, so we can hear the birds when we are biking aside the cars, and we can hear people talking and crying and laughing and so on. So cars in the street it's very annoying, I think.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I mean, I think it would be interesting to be a scientist, really to study astronomy or geology or something like that with nature. But it doesn't fit so well to me. It might take too much time and be a little bit too slow for me to do all that research and very, very long sprints. I'm a little bit faster than that. So I'm very happy in the way I work today as a creator and builder. But if it's something else that I like to work with, and I'd like to be a musician or a fiction writer for books and film, that would be nice if I can only spend my time on creating music or fiction for books and film. That could be fun.
What profession would you not like to do?
Well, back to the cars. I hate driving cars. We have an old Volvo, and we only use it to go to our summer house in Copenhagen. We only bike, so we have an old V70 from 2002, and it's almost not sticking together no more. And when this car dies, we will not buy a car anymore. So I think that driving a cab in the city or driving trucks along the autobahn, I would die. I would die doing that.
If you could be a co-founder of any startup at any era, which one would you choose?
Well, I love the Renaissance, especially the Italian Renaissance. Da Vinci is my biggest hero and idol and inspiration somehow. I think it's and some of the other people's living in that time, and I think it was so interesting how they mixed the technology. Obviously, there was no digital technology that time. It was mechanic technology, but they did windmills and the first submarines and aircraft, and they did clock mechanics and all kind of mechanics. But they also did a lot of art, and there was a lot of philosophy. So I love that era, and I think that I know that one technology that came around at the first time in the Renaissance was actually the flush toilet. So I think that I would have loved to be the first startup for flush toilet technology in the Renaissance Italy in the 16th century. Think of that, to be the first flush toilet technology startup in the 1600 in Florence or Rome. That would be fantastic to have on your CV.